Hey guys! Today we're slipping quietly into the sandals of an Ottoman soldier. But not just any soldier. The kind who carries both a sword and a symbol. You're not marching into battle just yet. Instead, you're being led into the strict, echoing halls of Janissary training. And somewhere between learning to march in rhythm and avoid heat stroke in 15 layers of wool, you realize there's sheet music in your supply pack. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your city and current local time in the comments. Now, relax. Maybe put on some soft music. And let's get started on today's journey together. You've just been taken, not quite kidnapped, but definitely recruited, into one of the Ottoman Empire's most elite corps. You're young, healthy, and you used to be Christian. Probably from somewhere like the Balkans or Anatolia. Now you're a Janissary, which means your days of herding goats or fixing fishing nets are over. You're handed a uniform, a deeply unflattering hat, and a clarinet. Well, not exactly a clarinet, but something equally surprising. The camp smells of sweat, dust, and something like roasted eggplant, which is apparently what you'll be eating a lot of. You're marched through endless drills, sometimes barefoot, sometimes blindfolded, always with a lot of shouting. But curiously, there's music, constant music, not just bugle calls or battle horns, real, full-body tunes, drums, cymbals, flutes that seem to whistle commands in the air. Turns out, in the Ottoman world, music isn't a luxury. It's discipline. The Mater band, the musical wing of the Janissaries, isn't a sideshow. It's core to your new identity. And you're expected to learn. Between combat lessons, you're introduced to Ottoman instruments with names that sound like they belong on a charcuterie board. Tirna, Davul, Nakher. You're told the rhythm must match your step must match the melody, and the melody must make your enemies tremble. You nod, though internally you question how terrifying a bassoon solo can really be. Still, the logic becomes clear. In battle, the band plays from the front lines. The rhythm sets the pace for marching armies and cues for tactical movements. Drums thunder when to charge. Flutes whisper when to flank. You're not just learning an instrument. You're learning strategy. One afternoon, your instructor hands you a battered kettle drum and points to a pattern scrawled on parchment. It looks more like a cake recipe than music notation. But you go along. He claps. You strike. He nods. You miss a beat. He frowns. You wonder if he's considering replacing your lunch ration with another lesson. This goes on for weeks. You thought soldiering would involve swords and sweat. It does. But you didn't expect to be correcting your rhythm at dawn while pigeons roost on the rafters. And here's the first mainstream fact sliding quietly into your sleepy brain. The Janissaries were the first standing army in Europe to use music systematically in military organization. Long before marching bands had halftime shows, the Ottomans had Mater units thundering morale into the veins of thousands of troops. But here's the quirky fringe detail. Some Janissary musicians believed their instruments could literally frighten enemies. Not metaphorically. They told stories of rival armies who'd flee at the sound of Davul's massive drums you can feel in your lungs more than hear with your ears. Did it actually happen? Some say yes. Some say it's the 16th century equivalent of telling your enemies your dad works at Nintendo. And the scholarly debates? Oh, they swirl like dervishes. Some historians argue the Janissary musicians were genuinely trained combatants. Others insist they were ceremonial appendages who never left the royal court. But you know the truth. You've bled on your flute reeds. You've polished both your sword and your triangle. You've fought for tempo in the barracks and territory in the battlefield. Your hands grow calloused in two very different ways. One from weapon drills, the other from gripping mallets in endless percussion exercises. Sometimes you dream in rhythm. You swear you can hear the beat of the Nakher echoing in your sleep. though that might also just be your bunkmate snoring. Despite the exhaustion, there's a strange satisfaction. You're a Janissary. Yes. But more than that. You're an artist with armor. A performer who can split a tree with a single swing. Then hit perfect 4/4 timing while marching over a bridge. You're beginning to see the Empire not just as conquest and control, but as choreography. A passing commander pauses during inspection. He watches you beat the drum, your foot tapping instinctively to the rhythm. He grunts. Not quite a compliment, but not a complaint either. High praise. By Ottoman standards. Eventually, you realize something unexpected. While other armies roar to intimidate, your army hums. It trills. It vibrates the earth with coordinated percussion. You may never get used to the boiled wheat stew or the way your uniform chafes. But the music feels like home now. And just as you're settling into this melodic military life, word arrives. You'll be marching out soon, alongside the Sultan's forces. Not just to fight, but to play. You're not entirely sure which task is more terrifying, but that's a rhythm for another section. The sun hasn't even blinked over the horizon, and you're already on the move. Your boots thud against the dirt with maddening precision. Left, right, left, right. Because the drum says so. Somewhere behind you, a soldier's ceremonial wails like a goat in labor. But you've learned that's just how it's supposed to sound. This isn't a parade. Though the spectacle might fool you. You're part of an imperial procession now. A living column of power snaking its way across Anatolia toward battle. At the center rides the Sultan himself, shaded by a velvet canopy the size of your mother's house. But at the front, leading the entire parade like a musically armed scarecrow, is your mater band. The mater doesn't walk. It stomps. It pulses. You're pounding your kettle drum so hard your palms buzz with the shock of every strike. The bass reverberates through the chests of the marching infantry behind you. The rhythm is the Empire's heartbeat. And guess what? You're the arrhythmic doctor making sure it doesn't skip a beat. You might think this spectacle is for morale. And sure, part of it is. But that's not the full picture. It's also psychological warfare. You approach villages and towns like a marching thunderstorm. People don't see soldiers at first. They hear them. The music grows louder, stranger, almost alien. You remember the story they told back in training, about how an entire Venetian outpost once surrendered just from hearing the Janissary band echoing across the water. Whether that's true or not, the way people cower as you pass suggests it could be. Historical fact alert: the mater was the world's first official military marching band. Established well before European armies adopted the idea. Napoleon himself was reportedly fascinated by it. You wonder what he'd think of your blistered fingers. The journey is long. The music, constant. You play until your arms shake. Then rest just long enough to eat something resembling soup and something else resembling sadness. Then you're back at it. Day after day. Dust caking your throat. Sun melting your scalp. Flies treating your ear canal like a public spa. But still, the beat goes on. One night during camp, your section is ordered to play for the troops. Not for morale exactly, but for ritual. The music is seen as sacred. Each rhythm supposedly aligns the body, the soul, and the empire. One elder Janissary mutters about music warding off evil spirits. Another swears that playing the right ceremonial melody can turn a bad omen into good luck. You smile. But part of you wonders if it's really superstition when half the soldiers swear by it. Now comes the battle. Or, as you like to call it, the part where I question my life choices. You're positioned on a slight hill, just within sight of the enemy. Your drum is strung across your torso. You can see cavalry readying their spears, infantry tightening grips on their shields. The smell of tension and impending sweat fills the air. And what do? You start playing. The first beat strikes like thunder in your chest. Then another. Then the cymbals crash. The ceremonial wails, shrill and high-pitched like it's trying to rip a hole in the sky. The sound isn't meant to entertain. It's meant to overwhelm, confuse, agitate. You watch as the opposing line shifts. Some soldiers flinch. One poor soul actually drops his weapon. There's that story again. Alive in real time. Your music is noise and war cry and spiritual summoning all at once. And here's the open scholarly debate you're living through. Historians still argue whether the meta music directly influenced the outcome of battles. Some say yes. Music as a psychological edge, rallying your side, demoralizing theirs. Others claim the actual tactical value was minimal, that it was more ceremonial than strategic. But when you see enemy archers fumble their bows mid-march, you lean toward team soundtrack saves lives. But then comes the part they didn't prepare you for. Your position is attacked. Arrows rain like angry toothpicks from the sky. A rock lands dangerously close to your cymbal bag. You've always been told that Janissary musicians don't fight during battle. That your job is to play through the chaos. But the chaos just got a lot more personal. You duck. You curse, softly. Because PG-13. You glance at your drum and, in a moment of unexpected clarity, use it as a shield. The arrow bounces off with a dull thud. You make a mental note, add this to my instrument's CV. Somewhere to your left, a comrade keeps playing through the attack. He's bleeding, but his zurna is unwavering. It's heroic. It's ridiculous. It's very Janissary. Eventually, the tide turns. The battle is won. The enemy pushed back. You don't know how much of that victory is thanks to swords and how much thanks to your aggressive clarinet cousin. But the men cheer like Mozart personally intervened. Later, around the fire, your section jokes about how you technically fought with musical notes. Someone calls your cymbal the shield of rhythm. Another composes a song about your heroic drum parry. It's deeply off-key, but the spirit is there, then. As you're falling asleep to the crackling fire and the sound of someone snoring in B-flat, you wonder what it means to be both warrior and musician. You're not just beating drums. You're carrying a tradition that's older than most European symphonies. You're a living contradiction, disciplined and artistic, violent and melodic, feared and frankly fabulous. And somewhere, in the Sultan's tent, a new order is being drawn up for the next campaign. You just hope it comes with a new pair of drumsticks. You wake up stiff and smoky, your clothes still carrying the scent of last night's fire. There's a drum imprint on your stomach from sleeping too close to your gear. A beetle the size of your thumb scuttles across your boot. You flick it off and rise. The war is over. But now comes the part you didn't train for. The performance. Victory processions are an art form in themselves. This morning, the Sultan's page delivers the order with zero enthusiasm, as if announcing soup options. You and your fellow meta musicians are to lead a grand parade through the conquered city's gate. The local population will line the streets. There will be banners, incense, offerings of food you probably can't digest. Your job? Sound glorious. You rub sleep from your eyes and tune your instruments with the precision of a fussy old librarian. You polish your drumhead, grease your cymbals, and help your friend re-knot the tassels on his zurna. The uniforms, those ridiculous high hats and sweeping robes, are checked for lint like it's a royal wedding. You have to look intimidating, ceremonial, and somehow festive. No pressure. As you begin marching, the crowd's reaction is exactly what you'd expect. Half awe, half confusion. Children clap. Elders make signs to ward off evil. A few folks toss flower petals. You keep your gaze steady and your rhythm tighter than ever. You are not just a musician today. You're a symbol. A walking advertisement for Ottoman victory, culture, and a surprisingly complicated musical tradition. Mainstream historical fact: after major military victories, the Meta ensemble often performed public concerts. Not just for the Sultan and army, but for civilians in the cities they passed through. The goal was clear: project power not just with weapons, but with art. You were supposed to impress people into submission. Somewhere near the market square, your section breaks into a fanfare so loud it startles a horse into galloping sideways into a fruit stall. Oranges fly. A vendor swears with a tone of voice that needs no translation. You keep playing. You always keep playing. Later that evening, after the formalities, the band is invited to perform privately for the Sultan. His tent is massive, its interior glinting with golden embroidery and the smell of rose water and roasted meat. You can't see his face clearly through the silk curtain, but you feel the weight of his presence. Every note counts now. Your group starts the Bayram March. A classic. Strong. Percussive. Steady. The Sultan nods. One of his advisors taps his foot. Then, just as the Zurna squeals into the second verse, the unthinkable happens. Your drum skin splits. It sounds like someone popping an overripe melon. You freeze for a beat. Then catch yourself, flipping the drum and pounding the opposite side like that was the plan all along. Crisis, narrowly avoided. Pride, moderately wounded. Afterward, you're quietly commended for your composure. A servant whispers that the Sultan laughed. You'll live off that for weeks. This, you realize, is your life now. A blend of deadly seriousness and slapstick improvisation. You're a Janissary and a jester. A warrior wrapped in velvet. A musician with marching orders. There are whispers going around that Europe is watching. That the Austrians are trying to form their own Mater-style units. That somewhere in Poland, nobles are attempting to mimic your percussive war dances. One fellow even heard that a French composer wants to write a symphony in your style. You raise an eyebrow at that. What? A flute playing next to a cannon? Fringe historical tidbit time. Some Ottoman drummers reportedly carried multiple drums into battle. Not just for volume but to switch tones mid-march. One ambitious fellow even strapped 3 to his waist like a musical belt. You haven't met him, but you imagine his back pain was majestic. Soon after, your group is dispatched back to Istanbul. The journey is less intense this time. More ceremonial. You stop at cities and fortresses along the way, offering performances. You're both entertainer and enforcer. A public relations agent in a feathered helmet. One village offers you apricots in exchange for a private concert. You accept. You've played for kings, generals, and now, a goat and 5 grandmothers. But honestly, they're your favorite audience so far. They clap offbeat, but they smile like it matters. As you approach the capital, the city begins to shimmer in the distance. Minarets catch the sunlight. The Bosphorus swims lazily below. Istanbul is always louder than you remember. Always brighter. Always more crowded. You're home. And yet not quite. Because you don't get to settle in. There's already another order. Another campaign. Another sultan with a new fancy for expanding the empire like it's a board game. But before that, you're told to perform at a wedding. Not just any wedding. This one involves a pasha's daughter and a poet's son. The political symbolism is thick enough to walk on. You're given special silk robes and instructed to play joyfully, but with dignity. Whatever that means. During rehearsal, your section jokes about creating a new march. Something cheeky. Something that sounds like a love song snuck into a battle chant. You try a few bars. It's terrible. It's beautiful. It's probably ahead of its time. The wedding is crowded. Lanterns sway in the warm breeze. There are acrobats. Trays of honeyed nuts. Dancing dervishes spinning like human tops. You wait for your cue. Then, the Zurna screams its opening note. And you march. Not into battle this time, but into union. Your beats are slower. More melodic. You let the rhythm shimmer rather than stomp. People sway. The couple smiles. For once, no one ducks under a table. As the final cymbal crash fades into the night, a strange thought hits you. Maybe you're not just writing soundtracks to war. Maybe you're writing history in rhythm. Stitching moments together with noise. Guiding the empire's mood with the swing of your mallet. No one told you this part. that you'd become part musician, part myth maker. You pack your drum carefully that night, running your fingers across its worn surface. It's scarred, like you, but it still sings. And tomorrow, it will sing again. The morning after the wedding, you wake to the sound of a rooster who clearly moonlights as an alarm clock for the entire district. You lie there, listening to the buzz of the city returning to its usual chaos. Vendors haggling, donkeys braying, an argument already breaking out over the quality of lentils. You yawn, stretch, and drag yourself up. There's no official performance today. But the mater never really rests. There's always something today. It's a royal visit from a Venetian ambassador. You're told to prepare a scaled-down version of your usual spectacle. You try not to roll your eyes. Scaled down still means full uniform. Shiny boots. At least 4 instruments per person. And several hours of rehearsed noise polished until it gleams. You wonder if the ambassador will understand any of it. Or if he'll just go back and describe you as loud men with hats shaped like pastry. But here's the thing, these performances aren't just for fun. They're diplomacy. A kind of rhythmic theater meant to awe, confuse, and subtly intimidate. It's cultural chess. You're the rook who plays the cymbals. Historical debate still swirls around just how much the mater ensemble influenced European classical music. But one thing's certain. Your tunes travel. That much you know when the Venetian nods along during the performance. His fingers tapping the chair. Somewhere in his mind. You can almost hear him mentally composing a letter to a composer back home. Dear Marco. Add more drums. It isn't all pageantry, though. That evening, back in your barracks, the older members talk about the rumors. Not the usual ones about uprisings or tax hikes. But quieter whispers. Talk of discontent among certain Janissary ranks. Some claim your time as elite warriors has passed. That you've become soft. Ornamental. Just another troop to entertain the palace. You bristle at the idea. You can still fight. Your sword hasn't dulled. But, you also haven't drawn it in months. And your calluses are thicker from drumsticks than weapons. It stings. More than you care to admit. You try to laugh it off with a younger recruit. Next they'll make us serve sweets and play lullabies. He chuckles. But it's the nervous kind of laugh. You both know it's not impossible. And here's the quirky tidbit that hits you sideways. Some sultans reportedly used the mater as alarm clocks. Literally. A private wake-up performance to start their day. You imagine trying to sleep through 30 zurnas blasting into your face before breakfast. Perhaps that's why some of them ruled with such fiery moods. But back to you. You're not just a musician. You're still trained. You still march in drills. Your superiors insist the discipline be kept alive. There are rumors that one day, the Janissaries might be called upon again for a major campaign. But no one knows when. Or if. Meanwhile, you're summoned to perform in a completely different setting. This time, for a gathering of foreign scholars visiting the palace library. You arch an eyebrow. Why would a bunch of dusty academics want a live musical demonstration? Turns out, they're fascinated by your rhythms. One even claims your timing aligns with ancient Greek battle chants. Another says it mirrors Persian festival beats. A third asks to inspect your drum as if it's an archaeological artifact. You hand it over carefully, feeling like a museum exhibit in real time. Afterward, one scholar confides that he believes your ensemble is the most sophisticated military music institution in the world. You beam. Then he adds, which makes it a tragedy you're no longer truly needed in battle. Ouch. You don't sleep well that night. Not because of any one comment, but because of what's building in the air. Istanbul has grown more complicated lately. The Janissary core is restless. Political tensions are thick. Everyone wants something. And most of them want it without music. You meet with a few senior mater members in secret. Not for rebellion. Don't get excited. But just to talk. About what comes next. Some want to modernize. Others resist. You suggest creating a new march. Something that blends old forms with fresh energy. They nod. Maybe that's the path forward. Evolution without erasure. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the day. The Mater Ensemble is considered the oldest military marching band in the world. Its roots trace back to the 13th century. And its music once marked the heartbeat of Ottoman power across continents. Every beat was a statement. Every melody a flag, and now? You're trying to keep that heartbeat alive while the empire snoozes through modernity. You remember a moment from a few weeks back. A child at a village performance had covered their ears and screamed. Too loud. You laughed. But later, it occurred to you. That child doesn't fear war. They don't associate your music with empire or conquest. To them, you're just a noisy sideshow. Maybe that's not all bad. You're summoned again. This time to train new recruits. You're not thrilled. The fresh ones are always either too eager or too sleepy. But when they arrive, something changes. One of them plays a rhythm you've never heard before. Off pattern. Slightly chaotic. But with a kind of soul that grabs your chest. You make him repeat it, again, and just like that, you see a way forward. A new rhythm for a new generation. You tweak it. Build on it. Fuse it with the old marches. Suddenly, the room pulses with something ancient and newborn all at once. The others gather to listen. They nod. They smile. It's imperfect. But it's alive. You step back and let them take over. You're still a Janissary. Still a musician. But now, maybe also a mentor. A bridge. A rhythm keeper of history and possibility. The drum feels lighter in your hands that evening. And when you sleep, your dreams sound like thunder wrapped in silk. You wake before the call to prayer, wrapped in silence that feels oddly thick. Something's shifted. The city feels like it's holding its breath. No clanging pans. No market bickering. Not even the distant screech of a street vendor warming up his pitch. Just stillness. Which, in Istanbul, is always suspicious. You rise, careful not to wake the others, and step into the courtyard. A pale light brushes the stones. Somewhere overhead, the moon lingers, caught between fading night and the promise of day. You don't know why, but you feel it. Today will not be ordinary. The summons comes quickly. All Janissaries, Mater included, are to report for an emergency assembly. You march in, boots scraping in synchrony with dozens of others, trying to read the faces around you. Tense jaws, darting eyes, silent salutes. It's a mood you haven't felt in years. The Aga steps forward. No long speech. No ceremonial niceties. Just the facts. A rebellion is brewing. Inside the core, some Janissaries are demanding reform. Others demand power. There's talk of removing the Grand Vizier, maybe even the Sultan. And in the middle of it all, music. Yes, you heard that right. The Mater is being accused of selling out. Of becoming the puppet musicians of a weakened empire. Some say your performances are a distraction from the real problems. Others claim you've lost the warrior spirit. There are whispers, actual whispers, that the Mater should be dissolved. You feel the heat rise in your chest. Not anger. Not fear. Something else. Sadness. Maybe. A strange ache in your ribs that throbs with each remembered note you've ever played in service to a state now trying to erase its own echoes. Still, you are ordered to perform. Not for celebration. Not for diplomacy. But for dominance. A show of force. You're to march through the city square. Bang the biggest drums. Blare the most brazen horns. And remind everyone. Your enemies. Your friends. Your own conflicted brothers. What legacy sounds like. You try to keep your hands from shaking as you lift your cymbals. The crowd is already gathered. People peer from windows. Children cling to their mothers. There's something fractured in the air. Like one wrong beat might tip the world sideways. You begin to march. The first rhythm cuts through the silence like a scythe through wheat. You strike hard. With precision. The bass thunders. The horns scream like hawks. The earth seems to pulse under your feet. Some cheer. Some cover their ears. Some weep. You keep going. Your uniform, already heavy, feels like it's soaked in lead. The plumes on your headdress twitch with each gust of tension. Your arms move from memory. Your legs from duty. The music is no longer performance. It's protest. There's a mainstream historical fact here. In 1826, during the infamous auspicious incident, Sultan Mahmud II would dismantle the Janissary Corps entirely. And with them, the mater vanished from the empire's streets for over a century. Some say it had to happen. Others mourn the loss to this day. But that's not your story. Yet, your story is now. As the march ends, you hold your final beat a fraction longer than usual. Not for flair. Just to hold on to something. The silence afterward is deafening. Even the birds hesitate. That night, fires break out in the Janissary barracks. You watch from a rooftop. Flames licking the sky like angry fingers. Somewhere below, men you trained with, marched beside, laughed with, cry out in the smoke. You don't move. You don't know who's burning what. You only know it's all unraveling. And here's the quirky tidbit you never expected to matter. Old mater marches, when played backward, were rumored to contain secret codes, instructions, some said, rituals, spells. You always thought it was a joke. Now you wonder. You almost want to try it. Maybe the answers lie in reverse. In the morning, you're given a choice. Stay and pledge loyalty to the palace. Music only. No rebellion. No questions. Or leave. And live with the rebels. Risk death. Or obscurity. Or worse, irrelevance. You look at your drum. At the faint scuffs that hold your entire past. You choose neither. You vanish. Not in dramatic fashion. No fleeing into the hills or hiding in a barrel. Just a quiet walk through the back streets. Past the kebab seller who always gives you extra onion. Past the old mosque where your cymbals once rang loud enough to rattle prayer beads. You head toward the edge of the city. You start again. You teach small towns, wandering students, villages that have never heard your rhythms. You rebuild the mater piece by piece. Not for war, but for memory. You keep the music alive. Not as a roar, but a whisper. Something that hums under your breath as you tie your sash. As you sip your tea. As you sleep. And yes, you meet others like you. Displaced Janissaries. Forgotten drummers. Old Suan players with more spit than sense. Together, you form something new. Not a corps. Not a rebellion. Just a rhythm that refuses to die. Some call you the Ghost Marchers. Others say you're a myth. But late at night, in quiet corners of Anatolia, someone always hears the faint echo of a beat. A call. A memory. And maybe, just maybe, it's you. And now, as the last echoes fade into the shadows of ancient walls, you sit beneath a quiet sky. The stars like pinholes in silk. Your drum resting gently against your side. There is no one watching. No sultan waiting. No enemy to impress. Just you. Your breath. And a rhythm so soft it almost isn't there at all. The world has moved on. But your steps still follow patterns laid down centuries ago. Your music, once thundering like cavalry, now sighs like wind through cypress trees. And that's enough. It doesn't need applause anymore. It just needs to exist. Quietly, firmly, persistently. Because music remembers. Even when empires forget. You lean back, watching the moon paint pale trails across the land that once shook beneath your boots. The war songs are now lullabies. The marches, meditations. The weapons are long gone. But your hands still carry the memory of weight. There's comfort in that. You close your eyes. The air cool against your skin. Your pulse slowing with the rhythm of everything that's come before. You're not a relic. You're a resonance. And as sleep curls its fingers around your mind, you let yourself drift into dreams woven from symbols, flags, laughter, and silence. A harmony of history and hope, because no matter how loud or soft the music becomes, someone, somewhere, will always be listening. Even now. End of script. Sweet dreams.